Hey, gang, Dave Johnson, Rob Woodfork, George Wallace. It's the Sports Huddle sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. We greet you on the day Deshaun Watson. Now, we understand it's going to be an 11-game suspension, the $5 million fine. Look, guys, my take is the NFL, this is basically what they wanted. They said they wanted the whole season. They wanted longer than 6 games. Compromise, it's done. It will then be something that's debated for the next 11 weeks. And when he goes into every road city, he's going to hear about it. But this is what the NFL wanted, a longer suspension. And no surprise, the NFL gets what it wants. Guys, any take?
Well, my take is this. It's, when you get a longer suspension from 6, it makes sense if you're going to, in a 17-game schedule, you go from 6, you go to 12. Where does the 11 come from? Oh, look at the game he comes back when the return to Houston game. So, even when the NFL is trying to quote unquote do the right thing, and it is the right thing to put him on the shelf for longer than 6 games, they're still not going to mess with the money. They want that marquee matchup that was lined up late in the season, and that's exactly what they did. So, again, good for them to sit him down for longer, but it's really curious that 11 games is what you landed on when it just so happens that a marquee matchup on your calendar is lined up there.
Well, I agree with you. There's no coincidences in the NFL. We've learned that over the years. So I think in some ways the NFL has now opened itself up to criticism that it's allowing him to come back for a marquee matchup that's certainly going to benefit the league. Because look, this league has become the most successful television series in the history of television. And that's what drives all this money that's flowing in this league. That's what allows Deshaun Watson to have a situation like this where he can still miss 11 games, pay out all this money, and still be financially fine. George?
Yeah, I mean, look, the $5 million fine, I mean, he was guaranteed $232 million from Cleveland in his contract. You fine him $5 million, it's going to go to charity. That's not going to make a dent in any of that. And look, if the NFL wanted the year and from the beginning, why have somebody else independent, go through this? Unless they, but let's be honest too, they probably figure there's no way she's going to come down with less than at least half the year, 6 games. So I think that kind of played into this too. But look, you're right. It's done. They can move on. The Browns have been dealing with this. It's no question. It had to leak into the locker room and they're trying to focus to get ready for a season. Question is now, what are you going to do at quarterback? I mean, you're saying, look, Jimmy G is still out there, folks. 11 games, a long time, right? We'll see.
Yeah.
And he's going to be rusty when he comes back. I mean, he hasn't played competitive football. I mean, he missed all of last year. He'll miss more than half of this year. I mean, you'd be bordering on 2 years.
Yeah,
in between actual regular season starts for him. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm the Browns, I'm getting somebody who I'm comfortable with being the starter. Yep. But look, and here's the other thing. It's like they have a really good football team. They have a competitive team, but in that division without a star quarterback, I mean, that was the whole reason why they made the move, was because they needed to keep up with Lamar Jackson and Burrow there in Cincinnati. So, I think this is going to be a lost season for them. Between the distraction, between not having Deshaun on the field for whatever he is off the field, on the field, he is a scintillating talent. So without him, I don't think that's a playoff team. So I think this is going to be a lost year for them. That's a move for 2023 and beyond, I think.
Well, and that's, I want to bring up on that point that this is going to be a distraction. This is not over because it's been settled, the 11 games. It's going to be a distraction the rest of the year. It just goes to show you that if a talent is that good, and obviously Deshaun Watson has been deemed to be that good, a team will go ahead and take on that talent despite all the distractions. There's other cases of players that you can say, well, why didn't they get a second or a third chance? Well, they didn't deem them talented enough to be beneficial against all the distractions.
Worth it. Yeah.
Worth it. Browns obviously believe that despite the fact that this is going to be an ongoing distraction, his teammates are going to be asked about it ad nauseum. The Browns still believe that the benefit outweighs all that comes with Deshaun Watson.
And the GM, they just said too, they asked point blank, would you do the deal again? They quickly said, absolutely. I mean, what are you going to say at that point? No, I wouldn't have done this, but you knew something was coming. But
Yeah.
to your point, that's,
Yeah, but again, if Deshaun Watson didn't have the level of talent that they believe he has, he'd be done. Simple as that. You wouldn't have to worry about an NFL arbitrator or suspension or coming back in the 12th week for a ratings grabbing game with the NFL. The NFL wouldn't even have him on his radar anymore. So the NFL, it's interesting matchup. They're trying to be the tough guy here, but oh yeah, please come back and get us some ratings for that Houston Texans game.
For a game that wouldn't be on anybody's radar otherwise.
Right.
Right.
No, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be the punchline of the joke. Yeah, I can't wait for that big Browns Texans matchup. Now it's no joke, guys. All right, we got the Commanders. Are we, George?
Speaking of,
Go.
Go.
Well, no, go. You know what? Most. Pardon me for the preseason fatigue, but and I'm glad they've shortened it to 3 games. I cannot imagine.
No.
And I'm old enough to remember when I was young, there were 6 games in the exhibition season or preseason, whatever. The most exciting thing to me was Wes Schweitzer this week talking about rock climbing, improving his game. So thank you for
Dave loved that.
Those
He
sound
loved that.
bites, because that to me, I'm not going to go out and rock climb, but that to me was exciting. But what's floating your boat right now?
Well, it's going to be at some point, these offensive line injuries it's going to become a thing. I mean, the good deal is that, yes, they have after the 3rd preseason game, basically 2 weeks off before the opener. So that is a change, and they can kind of scale back a little bit, ramp it up as they get closer to the game against Jacksonville on September 11th. But the offensive line injuries are a thing, because here's how it's going to affect Saturday. He wants to play the starters a full half and maybe come out in the 3rd quarter, maybe not. But if you don't have a guard situation, you don't have a guard right now. So that's going to kind of play into how Rivera is going to approach this game, because I'm not putting Wentz out there with a banged up offensive line and the quote unquote starters against Kansas City. It's just not going to happen, for at least not for a full half. The 22 plays last week, I thought were fine. I mean, he said he got comfortable with that 13 play, 74-yard drive, the third drive of the game, which resulted in a touchdown. Like to see that. The Antonio Gibson thing is, it is a concern. And we saw this week him returning punts, returning kicks. He was on punt block. And Ron Rivera, saying, look, we do that all the time. You guys just don't see it during the season. Not really sure how much I believe all of that. I think for sure he was sending a message, especially with Brian Robinson playing a lot with the ones this week. They definitely like the rookie out of Alabama. And why not? I mean, it comes from a program like that. He's expected to play. He's expected to be the guy. So
and also real quick on that running back situation, because I've been fascinated by that all week. I think that's why you take a Brian Robinson, because you need a guy on 1st and 2nd down. I've never had the idea that Antonio Gibson is a 3-down back. He's a guy who run out there on 3rd down. He's a situational guy, but I wouldn't have him out there all 3 downs. I think that less is more when it comes to a player like that, a guy who's going from wide receiver to running back and really doesn't know how to play the position well just yet.
Yeah, probably no coincidence we're seeing, to your point, Rob, you're not the only one thinking of that, because we're seeing him now. We don't know what this working out as a kickoff and punt returner means, but to me, that means, even though Ron Rivera's not said it, at least they're considering a change in how they use him.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, and he was saying like he was electric in college when he returned kicks. Well, he didn't return punts. So that's what was interesting to me, is trotting him out there on punts. So maybe they're just trying him out there, but on kickoffs, he averaged 28 yards a return, took one to the house for a touchdown his last year at Memphis. So he did flash some of that in college. I get that. But I mean, again, fewer touches is more in his particular case, because he's shown you he's going to put the ball on the ground. So if you give him fewer opportunities to do that, but then there are opportunities where you can get him out in space, that seems to make the most sense. And then Brian Robinson is your between the tackles guy. And he reminds me, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, he reminds me a little bit of Alfred Morris in the sense that he's a guy who's going to lunge for, like, he's, no matter what, he's going to get you at least 2 yards, even if you're hitting him at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a bruiser kind of guy. Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and look, they like it. Like, to your point, Dave, that's why you go out and get him. I mean, I think he fits into their plans big time. And Gibson, you can move him around. I think it's not a coincidence this week that he was working on special teams. I don't believe that. He put the ball on the ground in preseason game number 1, something he led the league in last year doing. So I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I think it's sending a message. I think Ron is, this year he can't, you can't wait things out. I mean, I'm gonna say desperate, but this is a year. Look, you have to, the first 2 weeks of the year, you have to win. You have to be Jacksonville. You have to be Detroit. If you're a team that in the third year and you're saying this is the year we got to win 10 games, he didn't say 10. I think a lot of people are saying 10, 9, 10 games, but this is the year you're going to take that next step. You can't start slow. And that's what this team does. It starts slow. That's why I think, like I mentioned last week, you're going to see these guys play a little more in the preseason. You can't take the chance this year. You cannot wait. And I think that you're going to see the urgency more and more with Rivera and this team coming up. I do.
That was a great third drive in the preseason game number 1 with Carson Wentz. The night before, Malik Willis was playing for the Titans. Does anybody in the room have any, and this is no disrespect to Carson Wentz, but is anybody thinking, maybe should have taken Malik Willis? I don't know why I want to stir that up on this Thursday, but that thought crossed my mind.
You really are bored with the preseason, Dave. Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going to roll this grenade into the middle of the conversation.
Hey, at least you didn't say Cam Newton
from the beginning, didn't I? I was even taking him in the first round.
All right. So it's low hanging fruit. I want to get used to it. But I was thinking, as I often am thinking, Rob's right. Thursday, that Ravens.
Oh, don't do that. Don't give him that. Come on.
No, but to the point, it had me thinking a little bit about that.
Yeah,
I know. It's a pointless.
I mean, I said that before the preseason.
You're right, though.
What's going on in Tennessee? I'm looking at what's going on in Atlanta, because in the third round, you had Malik Willis there. You had who's the other kid out of Cincinnati? Ritter, Desmond Ritter. You had those guys on the board in the third round. Nobody expected them to fall all the way to the third round. So with that second round pick, instead of getting another Alabama tackle, as if you don't have enough of those already, you could have had one of those quarterbacks. Worst case scenario, you stash him for a year, you redshirt him, and then play him next year, like they're doing in San Francisco. So I think that's a missed opportunity. And I don't want to keep piling on before the season even begins, but I still think this Carson Wentz thing is just destined to blow up in their faces. And every time I see one of these young players, because I mean, just like you said, watching what Malik Willis was doing. His coach was complaining he wasn't throwing the ball enough, but my God, he had 2 highlight reel plays that he just made with his athleticism. One for a touchdown and one like a sidearm, sort of, twisting his body in air. Like, we haven't had that since RG3, and I know he's a hot button topic too. But they need that here. They need that. Carson Wentz is going to be on a stretcher before we even get to week 8.
You think? I don't know. I'm not ready to. I think he's going to be okay. I mean, I'm not basing it on this anything. But
here's the thing: I'm not giving up a 2 and a 3 for okay. And
it's already done. You already gave it up.
And y'all laugh at me. And y'all laugh at me for Cam Newton, but Cam Newton could give you what Carson Wentz is about to do, and it costs you 2 draft picks.
I don't know about that now.
Right. You don't think so?
All right. Well, there's a.
I'm leaving
again. And again, it's a debate that goes nowhere because what's done is done. But
right.
But that's what we do.
This is what we should do. We should share our emotions. I got to admit, and it's only preseason, but I watched those highlights and I thought,
you started it.
I know. All right. Well, okay. Let's player to watch. I think the player to watch on offense is Carson Wentz. I mean, we're all focus is going to be on him.
Right. We should just say the player, not Carson Wentz, because that's always going to be the top answer.
No,
I tell you, and I mentioned it last week too, and I've seen all week in practice. I mean, the Jahan Dotson thing is a lot of fun to watch, and I really do. I mean, he had 2 really good touchdown catches this week in practice. I think that is going to be a huge help for this team because that's going to allow. It's going to if the coverage is on Terry, and if Curtis Samuel is healthy, forget it. I mean, this has a chance. Pretty dynamic offense. If Terry's healthy, obviously they're going to cover Terry. Jahan Dotson will get to work. Yeah. When they figure out Dotson, then Terry may be able to, as the players like to say, be able to eat a little more. And Curtis Samuel, if he can get the ball and he uses his speed, I mean, it could be a lot of fun to watch. But Dotson is is just, I love watching his progression right now. And last week, with Brian Robinson, his first action, and Sam Howell too. So that was, again, we know what it is. It's exhibition preseason games. You're playing against the other teams, second and third teams. I get it. But how quickly did Sam Howell become a preseason star last week? Come on, everybody calling for him now to start.
Right.
I
Hey,
mean, we
listen,
haven't
uh,
seen a
but-
preseason performance like this since the days of the late, great Colt Brennan.
Colt Brennan.
Yeah, remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, on
Marco
defense,
Mitchell.
I think, Rob, you bang this drum first, but I'll just jump on it. Jamin Davis has got to have a good preseason for the Commanders.
Yeah, I
got-
would agree. I mean,
He's got to
look,
show. He started to show late in the season last year. I mentioned this morning on TOP and of course Jack Del Rio says he's having a good camp.
Had a pick
He was a
yesterday
fir-
too.
He was a first round pick. He's especially with Chase Young's situation. You need him to step up in his role, and I think that's a player to watch. this season.
And I would say he's a player to watch for a couple of reasons. Number one, yes, you spent a first round pick on him, but also you had some veteran options out there. Bobby Wagner, I'm going to beat that drum because Bobby Wagner, man, that's a guy who, and I know he's a little older and he's got some, high mileage, but he's the kind of piece that could be transformational on a defense because of the leadership aspect. And that's something that Washington really needs because all their linebackers are like young guys. And quite frankly, Jamin Davis, I feel like he's better as like a weak side linebacker because of the speed and the range that he has. Playing, and I know he's not supposed to play the mic, but I think him playing the weak side is something that would accentuate some of the talent there. So hopefully he gets that opportunity. He certainly does need to step up, and if he plays at a high level, then this defense could be a lot better than people think.
All
And
right.
he mentioned about how it's, things are slowing down more this year. He feels a lot more comfortable. That's natural going into second year. I mean, he had a lot of eyes on him last year because, like you said, because of where he was drafted. He had an interception a couple days ago in practice. He's had a good good camp. Players have noticed it and talked about it. So,
But also you kind of get the feeling that he was kind of considered a little raw when they took him anyway, and you kind of feel like what they did in the draft this year, was almost with Jamin Davis in mind. They were like, we can't get somebody raw in our first couple of picks. We need to get guys who are ready to play and can come in and play at a high level right away. So, I think that Jamin Davis sort of worked into their thinking with that. And again, if he can catch fire and things have slowed down for him and he ends up being really good on the weak side, then they got something there.
All right, we'll go to the strong side here. The Mystics. It will be another title run. And I'm not the only one saying this. It's a lot of talk. Some people believe whoever comes out of this Mystics Seattle series could win it all. It is a curious WNBA playoff format where it's a best of three series that the Mystics are in. The first two games, they're going to have to play on the road. So they've got to win one to force the series back to DC. So that's a whole different story. But I truly believe that is not just a hype or a promo. You have the talent that Seattle has, the matchups during the regular season between these two teams. I mean, one of the Mystics' losses was on the final possession. But I think we need to appreciate, and I talked to him this week, Mike Tebow. He's the winningest coach in WNBA history, and you talk to him, and there's still that drive and desire to win another title. He is so focused on making this happen. Here's a guy, a basketball lifer. He's been around for decades in NBA, a lot of leagues. I have the utmost respect for a guy who was in the CBA. He was coaching in the Continental Basketball Association, the minors. He was coaching in the World Basketball League, which was a league for players 6'5" and under. That was around in the late 80s. So he has gone all over the place to make it happen, and he's making it happen in Washington, including a title. And with a player in Elena Deladon who won a title with 3 herniated discs in her back. And he says that there's some days she works 8 hours a day just to be able to play. So her commitment, even though she's financially secure, she's already won one championship, she is showing the drive to get back to the MVP level. And she's been doing that this season.
She's been playing at has played at an MVP level when she's played. I mean, they did a really good job. And you know how much I hate load management, but for her, it was absolutely necessary because of the back injury. And they did that. They did it effectively enough. Now, did it cost them a couple of games here and there? And maybe this is, maybe this series, the first 2 games are in Washington as opposed to in Seattle. Yes, that's probably a thing. But now she's healthy. She's ready to go. I think that in your piece on WTOP.com, you were pointing out that the defense is sort of the driving force, which is the opposite of what it was back in 2019 when they were this offensive juggernaut that could score 100 points pretty much at will. And now, defense that could be what gets them back to the championship round. And you're right. I don't think it's hyperbolic at all to say that the winner of this series could end up going all the way, because look, Seattle's got Breanna Stewart, who's probably the MVP of the league.
Yep.
And if not also the defensive player of the year. And then you have the emotional ride of Sue Bird, this being her swan song. And so, win one more for Sue. So, I think that defensively, especially in the backcourt, that's where the Mystics can win this. If they can lock down Jewel Lloyd and make this just a Breanna Stewart against the Mystics sort of deal and kind of keep her in check somewhat, then, advantage Mystics. But, this is a really good matchup. It's one that I didn't really want for somebody who wants the Mystics to win. I didn't necessarily want this matchup for them because I think it is a tougher matchup for them, but I think it is one that they can win, especially if you steal one of those first 2 games and then make a winner take all game 3 played over here at the ESA, which is a great atmosphere too, by the way, if anybody hasn't been to a game yet.
No, and again, I get back to, I also think just intangibles, the drive and desire of how badly Elena Delle Donne wants to play and continue to play. And she's showing that. How badly Mike Thibault, a basketball lifer, wants another championship, not only for himself, obviously, but for his entire team. This is his son, Eric, is an associate head coach who's earning his stripes on his own, not just because he's the Suns' head coach, but the commitment of Mike Thibault, this franchise that he essentially built and has turned in this last decade into a meaningful franchise. I think it's important for him to get another title. And I think the way he's constructed it, bench players like Elizabeth Williams, another defensive-minded player, Shakira Austin, that was a brilliant move, the way they drafted her, and she has come in with a defensive mindset. So
traded back to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think brilliant in terms of how he's managed the franchise. But I think they can steal one. They have to steal one in Seattle. I think they have the mental fortitude to steal one in Seattle, get out of the series. And I think, look out, we could be onto another title run.
And that's the thing, being a middle seed, this format, the 2-1 format, almost plays to their advantage because they are capable of stealing one on the road. So, for the, it plays to the advantage of the 1 versus 8, the 1 versus 8, we're going to just hurry up and sweep you out the way. In a 4-5 situation, you steal one on the road, which you're absolutely capable of doing. Now everything is in your favor now. And I like them. I like the Mystics' chances here, especially coming off this long rest. I feel like game 1 is the one you have to take because you did have the longer rest, and that plays to Elena Delle Donne's advantage, especially.
No, and I think the Mystics need to get the title because I haven't gotten the sense that we think the Commanders are going to be in the Super Bowl. So anyway,
I don't think any of us are going to live long enough to see that happen.
What did I miss?
As a matter of fact, they'll probably have a different name by the time they win another Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, we just any thoughts on the Mystics? We believe in this team because of their defense. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think not only the defense, but I just think it's one of those, what you talk about Delle Donne. She's got that killer kind of, I'm going to make sure this gets done. You have somebody on your team like that that's healthy now, and you come back and you it can be done. You've been there to do it. And I just think that's just the will that you need that on your team. And I think this team has that in her. So I think that's going to go a long way.
And Natasha Cloud. Well, the team really does have a toughness identity. And I think it's a great situation if you can get your offense right, because I think they can and are consistent. What I should point out, they've got the weapons So, this will be their time. With that, we've run out of time this week. Next week, what grenade will I throw into the huddle? This week it was Malik Willis. So we'll come up with something. As
Do we
always,
think, by the way, you think Dave Preston's going to come back off his cruise and join us next week?
no,
I mean,
I think we've lost.
I think he
All right.
will. And there's a 100% chance he's going to mention JD McKissick.
Right. And he'll give us the times of all the games for the NFL. All right. That's the DC Sports Huddle. We are sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. Thank you for your time.
Break.